All right, welcome back to another edition of Podcast Recovery. I'm your host, Eric V. David is a little bit under the weather and won't be in today, but we do have our guest, Mark. So, Mark, how are you doing today?
Yeah, not doing too bad. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So where are you from, Mark?
I'm from Ireland, just outside Belfast.
Oh, cool. All right, well, when were you introduced to recovery?
I was first introduced to recovery on April 3rd, 2019. My last bet was April 2nd, 2019.
Awesome, dude. That's great. So that was my next question. How long have you been in recovery? But you answered that one. So I guess, whenever you're ready, you can, tell your story.
Yeah, I'll start at the beginning, I suppose. I started gambling probably like anyone else in the UK or Ireland on the Grand National, which is one of the biggest horse racing events in the world. It's kind of over here, it's like every man, woman and child has a bet on the Grand National. It's just the dumb thing, that and seaside amusement resorts, sort of, I don't know what you would call them over in America, penny fall machines or 2p machines, that sort of thing. I don't blame any of that for my addiction, but that's probably the first time I can really remember gambling. But it started really for me once I turned 18. I opened my first online account, which over here, is where betting started to really boom online. But it was small, fun bets. I was working part-time. I was finishing off in school. So there was nothing too serious. And I would say it lasted that way for about 3 years. Friday nights I was sitting in the house, having a few bets on horse racing, soccer. I'd say that there was nothing serious. It was all in control and all affordable. I would say once I got a full-time job in Belfast, I started going to the bookmakers with other people from work during lunch. And around the start of 2008, 2009 soccer season was probably when I had my first moment of, things are going to be different from here on out. Mm-hmm. Instead of doing small bets, I decided to just do one bigger bet at £20 and on 3 soccer teams, and it won the first time I did it. The only time it won all season, of course, but I think it won between like £100 or £200. And from that point on, doing the small bets didn't give me the same sort of buzz. I felt like I had to up my stakes and continue betting at that level of £20, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but whenever you're still young and just living paycheck to paycheck, you get a few bets wrong and things can go bad. And that sort of was where it started for me. As I say, I was young. I was going out drinking with my friends the weekend. I was partying, doing whatever, and I was taking out payday loans to cover that and my gambling, which was getting bigger and bigger, credit cards, and then I was using those basically as to sustain my lifestyle. I even remember at one point I went to a check cashing premises near my work, which the way it worked was you'd write out a check for £100 and date it to your next payday, and they would give you £90 there and then. I did that twice and had £180 in my hand, literally walked out, and about 4 doors down was where the bookmaker was, and put it all on the horse who I assume was a dead cert favourite. Denman, he was called. He hadn't lost the race at that point and he fell. And I just remember feeling so depressed and walked back to the check cashing place and got another £90 so I could go out that weekend. Things like that now looking back going like that was a red flag, but at the time, I just thought it was bad luck more than anything. It was one of those things. And it was weird too because none of my close friends gambled, so I didn't even have anyone to share the story with or to tell, and I would have been quite honestly embarrassed to say like I lost all this money. But I sort of just started to keep my gambling to myself, becoming more secretive about it. So during all this, I was still living at home, so I had no real outgoings or anything. I gave my mum and dad some money for rent, it was like £100, and the rest of my money was pretty much my own, apart from car insurance. Then around that time, looking back on all that period was kind of hazy, but I moved in with my friend for a year before I met my current partner, who I'm living with now. And again, that there was probably the sort of first taste of real life. I had to pay my portion of rent for the food, for, all of a sudden there was a lot less money I had available to me and something had to give. and I decided that gambling, I would just stop doing it. So I self-excluded from a couple of online accounts. But that didn't last for very long, and I started opening up more of them. I missed it. I think, again, I was sort of thinking to myself, this is a bit of fun. I'm not doing anyone any harm by gambling. I was taking out loans and payday loans and credit cards, but I think in my own mind, I thought this is what young people do. I'm not worried about my credit rating. I wasn't thinking of starting a family or anything anytime soon. I was single, so why not? I'd say about a year after I moved in with my friend, I met my current girlfriend and partner who I'm living with now, and moved in with her. And I thought, right, well, this is going to be even more into the real world, having to pay pretty much for everything. And got a second job at a greyhound track of all places, which wasn't the brightest idea. I was working for £20 a night on the Thursday, Friday and Saturday, and after every shift I was probably spending £60 to £80 betting on the greyhound. So I wasn't making any money at my second job. I was just losing it. And not long after I moved in with her, I had a credit card and I managed to increase the limit to about £2,000. I remember sitting in the bookmakers just withdrawing cash until it was maxed out and just betting it, and I lost the whole lot. It was, again, the red flags were coming up, but my head was pretty much firmly in the sand. April 2012, we had our son. And around this time, my partner found out I'd been using some of her savings without telling her, and I was using the money to cover bills or to gamble with. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was the fact that I was taking the money without telling her. And she was pretty pissed off, obviously, whenever she found out. But I managed to smooth that over, and she took control of the rent money, the food money, electric, things like that there, which turns out to probably be a blessing in disguise because, if we fast forward to now, we never didn't pay our rent. We never went without food. She was in control of the main bills. I was just left in control of my own money. But that situation taught me how important it was to be secretive about my gambling. If I was going to continue doing this, she couldn't find out. And I also realized I was also pretty good at manipulating people, and I would use that to my advantage, towards the end of my betting career, if I would call it that. The end of 2013, I went on a crazy run of luck, betting away. That actually ended up paying for a holiday to Portugal. There's only two occasions where I can really remember winning money. That was one of them. And the next was December 5th, 2015, my biggest ever win. At £5 free bet on 3 horses. And it returned over £3,500.
Ooh.
And that was the biggest win I've ever had. Used the money to decorate baby number 2's nursery. I bought a PlayStation 4 and gave her some money and my parents some money, and the rest they just gambled away. I say baby number 2, that was my daughter. We had her in 2016. And around that time, the gambling was starting to approach danger levels, and I thought in my head I could figure all this out. I would even say, I was gambling while my partner was in labour, just sitting on my phone, just gambling online on whatever sort of sports. At the end of 2016, like I say, all that run up is kind of a haze as I look back on it. But from 2016, whenever it's still pretty clear in my head, 2 things happened. One, my Bet365 self-exclusion ended after 5 years. And 2, I managed to get an overdraft of £2,000 from a bank. And that's when the wheels really started to fall off. Now, Bet365, if I could describe it to you, it's like the perfect betting app. So it is everything about it, just the way it looks, the way it runs, just the whole thing. It's the best betting app, hands down. And from that point on, everything I did was online. So it was, and my daily routine started to become betting on soccer all day. So I'd wake up in the morning, start betting on Asia, or football in Asia, move across the globe into the Middle East and Eastern Europe by lunchtime, Africa in the afternoon, UK and Ireland in the evening. Then I was falling asleep gambling on South American soccer.
Wow.
And all of this was in play. So what that basically means is, as opposed to, before the game kicks off, picking my bet, I was actually following the scores live as they were happening and making these bets in play. So it'll be things like over 0.5 goals in the first half, or, Team X to score the first goal. And Bet365 have this little graphic that sort of shows you what's happening in the match. It's not a live picture sometimes they do, but Normally it's a little graphic of like a ball being moved around the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
I was just sitting watching that. So that was my daily routine, from sitting in work, doing this at my desk, doing absolutely no work at all. And then I say coming home, ignoring my family pretty much. I say I've got 2 young kids by this stage. I was there in person, but mentally I was just focused on gambling. They were just starting to get in the way of my gambling. I couldn't wait to get them to bed. I'd sit down with my phone or with my laptop. I would just be gambling away. And at this point, I was betting on pretty much anything: Chinese volleyball, basketball. I'm not just talking about NBA, Philippines basketball. Rain or Shine Elasto Painters were a favorite team of mine. Ice hockey from Sweden, from Russia, tennis. And tennis would eventually become the downfall in 2019.
Really? Tennis?
Yeah. Tennis was what I loved about tennis. I'll probably touch on it a bit later on. But what I loved about tennis was the speed of the game. Soccer was 90 minutes. That was far too long. Tennis, instead of betting on a match winner, I was betting on the winner of the first set, and eventually moved on to the winner of the next game. That's the sort of markets that I was looking at. And I was kidding myself into thinking that I can, by watching the same graphic, apart from it was a tennis net, with the ball going back, I could try and judge momentum on what way a match was going and who was going to win the next game. And I'm not talking about Roger Federer or Rafa Nadal here. I'm talking about ITF tennis, the lowest of the low standard of tennis, like players ranked outside the top 500.
Oh my God, really?
Oh yes.
So like you
Very
wouldn't,
so.
Would you vote would you gamble on, all right, so let's look at someone like Isner, right? So like I played tennis for a long time. So you would look at Isner and be like, all right, this is an easy bet. I'm going to bet every time on his serve.
Well, what I would do, the likes of John Isner, the thing I would do is tie break in the match. That would be my go-to bet. And I would sort of try to do, this is what I was going to say about my style of betting. I wasn't someone who was putting on massive amounts of money at any one time. My style of betting was more, I'd deposit £10 or £20, and hopefully I'd run that up. It would get enough bets in a row to get to a couple of hundred, and then I would increase my stakes.
Yeah.
But the minute I lost that amount, I would be straight back in, depositing more. So although I wasn't putting, say, £200 on one bet, I could have gambled away £200 in one afternoon, but just in smaller amounts. But whenever you say about Isner, that would be my bet. It would be a tie break in the first set, and if it won, I would roll all the money over to tie break in the second set. And if it happened to come up and it went to a third, I would all the money onto the tie break in the third set. That's how I would sort of deal with Mr. Isner and any other big servers.
Yeah, no, I can see how you would do, how tennis, like being someone who played and taught tennis for a long time, I see how you could just look at the serves and like you're betting completely off serves. But wow, that's okay. Go ahead. Sorry. I just got lost there for a second.
Is the odds obviously reflect the fact that Isner to hold the serve is going to be a terrible price, maybe 1 to 8, 1 to 10, if not worse. What I'd then be looking at is going, well, what price is the person to break the serve? How's the game been going? Trying to judge, like, they look like they're about to break serve. And once you move out of the top players and down into the lower ranks, serves mean very little. These people can't hold their serves as well.
Yeah.
Breaks of serve happen much more often. And I was sort of trying to use that to my advantage, but I was just basically betting blindly. I probably knew more about tennis players in the world than a lot of people, but I didn't know exactly what I was doing when it came to betting on it. But yeah, so that was kind of the way I was gambling too, though. It was the small amounts, but in my head, if I had money in my bank account, I couldn't settle until I'd lost it all. As long as I had money there, then I had to gamble it. That's what it was there for. I was reluctant to buy anything, of note for myself. Even when it came to like how I was eating, I was barely buying lunch for myself and work. I would buy like a packet of biscuits and an energy drink at the start of the day and eat those. And, I was always worried about my partner asking me to go to the shop, and I'd have to be like going, well, I've actually got no money. And then the questions would be asked as to why. But every sort of penny that I had was going to gambling. And I started to feel like I had to have a bet on at all times. The minute I woke up, the first thing I did was put a bet on. Whatever it was, wherever in the world, there was something on in play, and I would bet on it. I actually look back before I ended up stopping gambling there, and on my Bet365 account, within 6 months, it staked £35,000. Now, that's not that I lost 35,000, but the total amount that I turned over on my account was around about 35,000 on that site alone. And bear in mind, I was using maybe 5 to 10 other sites at the same time. So I was gambling non-stop, just constantly. And I was hemorrhaging money too. I would say in that 6 months, I probably lost about £2,000 to £3,000. But, you know, the figure of 35,000 shows how much money I was, you know, gambling each time and how often I was gambling.
Mm-hmm.
And my partner was completely unaware of all this. You know, the rent was always paid, as I said earlier. Money was always there for food, the electric, heat and oil, things like that. She was in charge of all that. I was in control of the rest of my money. You know, I was bouncing direct debits. I was figuring out, you know, I could bounce this 1 month, pay it the next, and bounce this other one. And I was just like, not only was it gambling, but then I was trying to juggle my own finances, which were getting worse and worse. I was borrowing money from friends and lying about the reasons. You know, would be always something like, oh, my kid was sick, so I was off work unpaid, and could you lend me this to cover a bill? And that's probably one of the worst feelings coming into recovery is, you know, everyone lent me the money because they trusted what I was saying, you know, and I completely abused that trust, which I think actually what probably makes it worse too is the fact that they've all stood by me after a minute I had a problem. But that's something that I'm going to have to deal with in recovery. At the start of 2018, I found what I thought was the holy grail of making money when I was gambling. And it's called match betting. I'll quickly explain it here, but it's basically taking advantage of bookmaker offers. So say you sign up to a site and you bet £20, you'll get a £20 free bet. If you bet the £20 on their site, say on the New England Patriots to win,
yeah,
and you go on to what we have over here is a betting exchange, and you would lay the New England Patriots there, which is basically the New England Patriots not to win. So either way, you're going to get it right. You'll make a small loss on that, but then you'll have the £20 free bet. And if you do the same thing at bigger odds, then you can actually make money off the free bet. I don't know if I explained that great, but
no, it makes sense.
That's kind of the way it is. So if you do that often enough, you can make money, and it's the same with all their offers. So I started doing that. I even told my partner about this because I thought it was foolproof. And for the first few months of 2018, it was going great. I was barely gambling myself. I was doing all these offers. I had money, making a couple of £100 each month, hardly any risk. And it all went to shit in July of 2018. When over the summer, a lot of the offers dried up because there was no soccer on over here. And match betting had introduced me to the casino side of things, which I'd never been interested in online. And in July 2018, I lost $3,500 on roulette in 24 hours, and I didn't have $3,500. I deposited the money via PayPal using the direct debit option, so it wouldn't actually come into my account for a couple of days. And they allowed me to deposit $3,500 into my Paddy Power account without checking my bank account, and I lost a whole lot on roulette. That was probably the beginning of the end for me. You know, if I ran out of money, I would use anything I made from match betting to gamble to try and make back this $3,500 that I had lost. You know, at that point too, I promised to pay to have our living room in the house decorated. Told my partner, yeah, I'll do that. This will be great. You know, making this money, we'll have more than enough.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I got to actually paying for the decorator, I had to go around to mum and dad and lie to them about needing to borrow the money because I made a mistake when I was match betting and told them some bullshit, and they lent me the money. And it was at that point too, I won about £1,000 on an NFL bet, and I was sitting in my partially decorated living room with that money thinking, well, if I just withdraw this, I could pay back mum and dad, I could buy some Christmas presents, and everything would be sort of okay again, and I could look at my other debts as the time comes. And instead I just lost a whole lot playing roulette again. Just sitting, like, I just have that image of me sitting in a partially decorated living room, looking around me going, this money could fix this, and just gambled the whole lot. Let's see, now we're sort of getting towards the end of 2018. I run several NFL fantasy football leagues as well. And I've done that since 2015. A lot of close friends are in them, but some Americans that I've met through other leagues of mine are in it too. I don't know if you're into fantasy football.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I run dynasty leagues. So you keep your same team year after year. So it's normally the same group of people. And I was the commissioner of those leagues, and I was in charge of the money. And every year I pretty much gambled the money away, but I always managed to pay out people on time somehow. But coming to the end of 2018, there was no chance that I'd have the money to pay people what they were owed. So that pressure was starting to get onto me. I had that $3,500 hanging over me. I was at other debts that had built up over the years. And like my mind was I was just in a terrible place mentally. At the end of 2018, I actually started to lurk and then posted on the Reddit problem gambling sub.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to people there, and I thought to myself, you know what, if I could just stop this casino stuff and focus on match betting and sports gambling, I could be okay. I could actually make the money and get out of this situation, which worked for about 2 weeks. And then I just went off the rails again. I was lying to my friends and my family about needing to borrow money. And before, I'd always had paid them back on time so that I could actually use them again, to borrow money. So even in the early days, I was manipulating people that way by saying, I know if I borrow this money off them, pay them back on time, they'll think I'm good for it and lend me the money again. But this stage, I couldn't afford to pay people back. I was making up excuses, and the pressure was just getting to me. Going into 2019, I was completely consumed by gambling. Every waking moment was either betting money, or if I ran out of money, I was doing budgets to try and work out, how I can afford to get through the month, what do I need to do, who do I need to borrow money off, who can I ask to borrow money off. And I was literally doing zero work. I was just sitting at my desk, either betting or panicking about what was about to happen. And I say to you, I was flat out at this stage on the tennis betting, so it was just the next game winner, and it was quick. And I say it was the ITF tennis, and it was just, these unranked players. One story I have from tennis is I actually bet on a game where they had one ball the whole game. That was it. There was no new balls, there was no ball girls or ball boys, or there was just one ball the whole game. And every time they faulted it, they go down the other end of the court, pick it up, knock it back over the net, and serve again. Because they actually had live video of this on Bet365.
Wait. So, there's a bet on just what, the ball?
No. The match that I was betting on,
yeah,
they only had one ball instead of having the way they'd have maybe 4 or 5 or 6 balls.
No, yeah, of course, yeah. They only had one ball.
One ball the whole game.
That's absolutely wild.
I know. And there was me gambling on it, thinking this was great. And another one seemed to be played at in a park, and there was a duck and all flew onto the court, and they had to suspend play while someone came on and chased the duck off. And that, this was the level of stuff that I was betting on. And the markets were there every day. There was matches every single day from all around the world. Kazakhstan, in the outback in Australia, living terrible tournaments in America, Spain, you name it, every day those are available. So then I suppose I may as well get to the weekend prior to April 2nd, which is when I had my last bet. I'd just been paid that week, deposited some money into Bet365. I managed to get my balance up to £910. So that was on the Friday. If that £910 would have cleared some of my urgent debts, people I owed money to from the fantasy leagues, and I probably could have continued on gambling. And I said to myself, that's it, I'm withdrawing this once I get it to £1,000. All I had to do was win 19 more pounds on Friday. It was going to be easy. And I lost a lot by Friday afternoon. I think I lost £300 or £400 on Benoit Paire. I was just betting on his match, and and mistakes were getting out of control. I was just chasing losses. Then on Friday night, I deposited whatever money I had left to try and win back the money. And I won back some of it, but it wasn't enough. I wanted to get back to £910. And I went like that the whole weekend. On the Saturday, I had a family anniversary dinner to go to, and I sat on my phone the whole night, ignored everybody, just sat on my phone gambling the last couple of pounds I had in my account on tennis, just trying to get back to where I was. And I say eventually the money ran out. I could have actually made it work financially and gotten through that month by lying to people again, but mentally I was gone. It felt like, if my head was an airplane, I was just in a nosedive hurtling towards rock bottom. So I sat down on the Monday and I wrote down a list of all my debts, who I owed money to, what a budget would look like without gambling. I looked up where my nearest 12-step meeting was, and just looking at it all in black and white, I owed 18 grand. And the money wasn't really the problem. It was how I actually felt inside. I had two wonderful kids, a wonderful partner, and I was just wasting my life completely by gambling. So on the Tuesday, I found a set of balls and told my partner. I was a mess when I told her. I fully expected her to kick me out. To be honest, I wouldn't have blamed her. I cried, said, how sorry I was, and showed her the notebook of all who owed money to. And then, she amazingly, she took it well and said that she was willing to stand by me, but left me under no uncertain terms that if I was to go back and do that again, or go back gambling again, that was the end of it. We'd be over. Told me to phone my parents round, telephone my parents, get them to come round. And I told them. Turns out, actually, whenever I did ask them to come round to our house, they assumed I was going to ask them to borrow more money, which was pretty much what I was using my parents for that whole time. It was just as people just to give me money to bail me out of situations. Again, they were supportive too, and then I told all my close friends, told the ones who owed money to in the fantasy leagues. And, I just, at that stage, that was me. That was April 2nd, whenever I started to tell people.
Yeah.
Self-excluded from all my online accounts. We have a thing over here called GamStop, which it's basically like a mass self-exclusion. If you sign up to it, it'll self-exclude you from the majority of sites in the UK and Ireland.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, which is handy, and that's for 5 years. I'm self-excluded for that. Went to my first 12-step meeting on the 3rd of April, which was a Wednesday. Now, that doesn't suit. Monday is my night now. I go every Monday, but I felt like I needed to get the one ASAP while I was still in that sort of frame of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much how I got into recovery. I don't know if you want me to talk about recovery or if you want me to leave it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about it for a few minutes, and then we can get to the questions. Where are you at with your recovery today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like I'm in a really good place for recovery. It surprised me, to be perfectly honest. I sort of felt like, this was I had to throw everything I had into it. When I went to my first GA meeting, the guy in the room said to me, if you put half as much effort into recovery as you put into your gambling, things will work out. And that stuck with me. So I started to go to the RSA, and then I've got another group of people who meet over Skype from all around the world.
That's cool.
I think there's maybe like 20 of us in the group now. We have a WhatsApp group, and it's up. Whenever I first started back in April, there was one meeting a week. There's now 3 meetings a week. I'd say we've got someone from Australia, India. There's people from America, Canada, all over. And it's really good as well, and it's great to be able to connect that way from in your own home. Got a sponsor now too, who, funnily enough, I happened to contact back at the end of 2018 through, got his details through Reddit, and we chatted over Skype, just texting each other back and forth. And I actually looked up the messages there recently, and it was me pretty much trying to convince him that I'd be able to control the sports side of things, and that there was no way that I wanted to get into, I didn't want to go into GA, because I had this preconceived notion of what a 12-step recovery program actually looked like. It was going to be a bunch of old people sitting in a church or a room beside a church, miserable, talking about how much they want to gamble. And that's what I had in my head. They were going to be trying to drag me to church every weekend and all this here, but nothing could be further from the truth. Whenever I went in there, it was such an amazing place. Met so many good people there, and it's a life program. That's what I started to realize, that it's not even about my addiction now.
Mm-hmm.
It's teaching me how to, yes, the stopping gambling, that's the easy part. It's what do you do with the rest of your life? Because you've stopped gambling, how do you stop going back to it? And that's what these people, whether it be in the 12-step program or my Skype meetings, they're showing me. I've started writing a blog too about my recovery. Been doing it since towards the end of April, and I find that it's helped me a lot. I And I think that's pretty much a lot of the recovery I'm doing. Listening to a lot of podcasts like your guys' ones. I only found it about a month or two ago, and I've been listening from the start, trying to catch up. And I find it extremely helpful. You know, I wrote down here actually one of my favorite quotes because I've seen it early on in my recovery, and it stuck with me. That, you know, since then, at some point there is no excuse. Either you want to do everything it takes to make it happen, or you don't. And that's something that I think about every day. You know, if it comes to the stage where I'm going, I can't be bothered going to this meeting tonight. You know, that I want to do everything it takes to make it happen. The next step won't be about me losing money. It'll be risking my kids and my family, and that's not a bet that I'm willing to make, pretty much. And that's it. I'll leave it there, I think.
Yeah, that was great, man. Great quote as well. So, all right. Well, I have a few questions.
Yep.
So the first one is, you know, online gambling makes it so accessible to place bets. And I imagine that even with the stop gambling, you know, thing that you signed up for, I imagine there's loopholes to get around that. So, you know, with smartphones and with laptops and with tablets, how do you avoid the online gambling? Like how does that not become a trigger when you're using a device?
There are loopholes around GameStop. I don't know what they are because I haven't decided to look at them. I know there's a few sites that aren't covered by it, but to basically get around GameStop, you have to lie about your details when you're signing up. So in my mind, I'm thinking, right, I could do that. Mm-hmm. And if I won, and this is obviously in a thought process of if I win and try and withdraw, which wouldn't happen anyway, but if it did, that's when they'd ask for my ID and they'd realize that I'd lied on the signing up, and then they would withhold the money and all the rest of it. So there's that. The other thing that I think I figured out pretty early on in recovery was acceptance. I've accepted that I can't bet, and I've accepted that fact, and I'm happy with it. It's not about the gambling industry having to change. It's not about the gambling industry having to coexist with me. I have to learn to coexist with it. You know, so although if I'm on Twitter and things like that there, and I see an advert for gambling, it doesn't bother me now. I think at the start I was thinking to myself, Jesus, again, there's a lot of these, but now it's just another advert. There's plenty of adverts on TV I don't pay attention to or online. Gambling is just another one.
Yeah, of course. And I'm sure as your habits change, the algorithms that produce the ads are going to also change. So the less you look at those things, the more, whatever pops up, like, a vacation destination you want to go to, or, some clothes you want to buy, that will then replace what you previously were searching, if the algorithms work correctly. But that's, that should work. So I guess moving on to the next one. So fantasy sports, right? Like, I enjoy fantasy. I think we bet on it. I think for one of my leagues, I give like $50 or something. I never win, so I'm just kind of donating the money. But do you consider fantasy sports, like, is that considered gambling for you? Like, or like, how do you view fantasy sports?
If you'd asked me this question about a month into recovery, I was like, fantasy sports isn't a trigger for me. It's fine. I'm going to still do my leagues, and, I'm going to, what harm is it? You say it's only a couple of bucks. I genuinely don't feel like it's a trigger for me. But the longer I was in recovery, the more I realized that, what? It's gambling. I am staking money to win money. That's what it is. Now I was in the unique position of having stolen the money from my league mates. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to just bail on the leagues. So I've come up with the ideas that I play for free because I run them pretty much as a fee for me running the league, setting them up, doing all the commissioner work. I play for free, but I'm not able to win any money. That's the other side of it. So there's just basically 20 pounds less in the pot. If I happen to win a league, then we're going to all vote together for a charity that it gets sent to. And that's the situation or the decision that I've come up with for my fantasy leagues.
Okay.
It may not be everyone's taste, I think if I suggested that in my 12-step program, they'd probably be like, it's still gambling. But, I'm not staking any money. I can't win any money. I enjoy fantasy sports for a hobby.
No, I like fantasy, right? Like I get really into, like the NFL when it starts. Like, I
Yeah.
almost care more about my fantasy team now than I care about I still care about my home team, and I care about them a lot, but the fantasy team almost takes precedent over the actual team. So I guess, with fantasy, just kind of continuing with the fantasy question, is there, because I know how I look at my phone all day, are you going to have like issues kind of like looking at your phone or being like not present in a situation because of fantasy football or whatever other fantasy league you might be in? Will you be more engaged with the fantasy or will you be engaged with like what's going on in life?
No, I think that, I'd say fantasy football, it genuinely for me is a hobby. It's something that I enjoy doing. On a Sunday, I sit down and I watch the NFL. I'll have red zone on from 6 o'clock our time here. So the 1 o'clock games over in America, right the way through to the end. I sit up and watch Sunday night football. My partner knows that I watch NFL. So the kids are in bed by that stage. If anything, fantasy is actually more of a social thing because I've got all these WhatsApp groups with all my league mates and we're messaging each other, and that's how I keep in touch with people. So it's probably the only thing that really survived when I was gambling.
Yeah.
Was these connections with people via fantasy sports. So I don't think it's going to become a problem, but where I think my mindset's now changed is if I can see fantasy sports becoming a problem, I think now I'm honest enough to be able to say this is a problem that I need to remove from my life.
That's awesome. So, all right. So about midway through your story, you were talking about like the honesty and the secretism, like being secretive during your gambling. So how have you learned since entering recovery to be honest with your spouse and with your family?
I think I've pretty much now that my partner, especially, mum and dad, aren't going to fall for any of my bullshit anymore. I think that's been one of the biggest realizations. And for me, I want to be honest to people. I sort of touched on it, I think, in the story too, when I said about, I was lying to friends and family to borrow money, and then they were trusting me because that's what I was saying. And then whenever I admitted to them I've got a gambling problem and I owe these people money, and I said, listen, I'll pay you when I can, and they were like, that's great. I'm really proud that you've admitted you've got a gambling problem. Pay me whenever you can. They're all supporting me. It's like, there's only so many times you can throw that back in someone's face before they're like, you know what? I don't want to deal with you anymore. So it's almost in my head, I'm going, I'm trying to prove to these people that have changed, that by them standing behind me and supporting me, they're doing the right thing. For me to start lying to them again and to fall into the old habits, they'll just disappear and I'll be left on my own, and I don't want that.
No, yeah, of course. All right, so you were talking about, a lot, the Chinese volleyball and, talking about like Kazakhstan and like all these countries, and you're talking about betting from one side of the world to the other during a day. Now I know basics about gambling. I'm not a huge gambler, so I don't know full details, but one question I have is, I follow sports a lot. I listen to sports podcasts all the time. I watch sports. I watch ESPN and all that stuff, and get my sports and news. So, did you manage to keep up with a lot of these sports that you were betting on, or are you more just betting on lines and different things that were coming up? Were you keeping up with any of this?
Yeah, there was certain sports, to say that the tennis became a big one where, I was gambling so much on tennis. I started to know these players. I started to, be like, oh, that person that person did well the week before in a tournament, so they must be in good form. Things like that. Obviously, NFL, I was pretty up to date on a lot of the major leagues in soccer. But it was other things, the Singapore Premier League for soccer. There was always goals in that, so that was always like my go-to bet. Like I know there's goals in this league, so I'll bet on goals. A first half goal in the Indian Premier League, always a first half goal in India, so I was betting on that. So it wasn't that I was really, I had no idea who these players were or what form these people were in. It was almost like, I know that there's normally goals in these games, so I'm going to bet on goals.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Then other times when you're talking about like the volleyball and stuff, I had no fucking clue what I was doing with that. It was just because that was probably the only thing that was on and I needed to have a bet. So I was putting money on it and hoping that, I picked right.
Oh man. There's some I know right now with this time of the year, like the August time frame, I know at least here in the States, there's nothing. There's just baseball. So
yeah.
So that's when
over here.
Yeah, so you're just betting on what, badminton and volleyball and curling or some shit?
Yeah, I mean there was baseball too, but Japanese baseball was on as well, so it was quite handy to have a few bets on in the morning.
Ah, okay. Huh. Okay.
Yeah, there's sports everywhere, and it was on, even whenever you got into basketball, there was the Australian basketball was on, so I could bet on it in the morning. And tennis runs, 12 months of the year pretty much, even these lesser tournaments. I don't think tennis pretty much takes a break. So there was always some tournament on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, it kind of takes a break from, the U.S. Open to the Australian, but there's still stuff happening. Just kind of...
That's the top level stuff, but at the lower level, there's tournaments every week.
Yeah.
And all sorts of different countries. So that's where I was going. I used to love Mondays and Tuesdays were the best because that's whenever the first and second round would happen and there'd be loads of games on. But the further you got into the week, when it was starting to get into the quarterfinals and semifinals, the games were more spaced out. And I was like, I want more tennis to bet on. And I always hated the weekend when it was the finals because there was hardly any tennis. I was almost looking towards the next week for the qualifying to start for these other tournaments to bet on that.
To bet on the qualifiers.
Yeah, even the lesser tournaments, some qualifying rounds.
So I guess, describe that to so I think I understand the feeling, right? So you're looking, what's that sensation that you're kind of getting? Because you're betting all day, so you're feeding this urge. Can you kind of describe that feeling that you're trying to, feed?
Whenever I have a bet on, I feel happy. I feel I'm focused on an event, whether it be the tennis or the soccer or whatever it is. I'm staring at my phone at that wee graphic on the screen with money on it and going yes, this is what I can focus on until it's over. Once it's over, it's there's a void in my life that I have nothing now to look at, and that sounds ridiculous now looking back because obviously I've got 2 kids. I had a job to flip and do, but I was I needed the next thing to bet on. I needed to just go straight on to the next thing. I could find myself the minute a bet won. The website I used was pretty good at settling bets quickly. I was straight on to the next one. If a bet looked like it was going to win, I was already looking for where I would bet next. This wasn't some sort of money-making exercise. Money was just the fuel that kept me gambling.
Oh, yeah.
And then once once I ran out of money, I was just empty. I just had this empty void in my life. I would sit up until my pay hit my account at 1 a.m. And immediately start depositing on the betting site to start betting again because I'd maybe went a week or 2 weeks, depending on how quickly I lost the previous month's money without a bet. So I actually went for, small extended periods in the month because once I ran out of money and couldn't borrow any more money, I couldn't gamble. But I was waiting for the next thing to happen. And obviously I was becoming more irritable and angry and just I was a miserable person. I don't know if that described it enough. But,
that describes it perfectly. I can completely relate to exactly what you just said. This filled a void inside of you. And, that I totally get it. That is that's perfect. So I guess you talked a little bit about money right there. And how money was just the fuel. Like if you had money, you wanted to spend it on gambling. How has your relationship with money changed since entering recovery?
For the first couple of months there, it's still pretty terrible. My partner has control of the majority of my money now. I have two bank accounts. She has the apps on her phone, so she can see any transactions if I made them. She's got the app for one of them. Sorry, the other one she just checks my phone on a weekly basis. But all the direct debits come out of the one she's got access to. In the other account, I get money for petrol, the money to do me for the week, which works out about £25 a week, and I smoke an e-cigarette, so the money to get my oil and stuff from e-cigarette. So that's basically what I'm in control of. And for the first few months in recovery, I was just burning through that money on crap, going out for lunch with people. Just, the first week, it was almost like I had an explosion of like, all right, I can't gamble, so I'll just buy random shit. Buying loads of chocolate, going out for lunch, as I say, coffees in the morning. And my relationship with money was still crap. I was still just wasting money on things that were needless. This has been the first month, I would say, that I've been better at it. I've sort of said to myself, no, you need to be strict. I don't need to be spending money on stuff I don't need.
Yeah.
That doesn't make me happy. I just do it. So I started, I think it was, it was like one of my friends in work, I think, was doing it, for good reasons. He was asking me at lunch, come out for lunch with us and stuff. And I wasn't saying no, because he didn't want me just to be sitting there knowing that I had a gambling problem, alone for lunch or whatever.
Yeah.
But now I got this stage, I'm like, no, it's okay. I can't afford to do that. I'll be fine, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, this has been the first month where I've probably been a lot better with it, staying within my means. But there was a sort of month or two there where I'd spent all my money. I get paid monthly, so I'd spent it all in a couple of weeks and was like, no, I have no money left now for the rest of the month.
Yeah, that's a hard one. The relationship with money, after seeing money as just like a means to get everything not like necessities, but to fuel your addiction, looking at it from a new light, it takes some time, right? I know it took me years before I was like, okay, we're good. So
like, even if it, if I was just the money thing, like I would say I deposited £20 in my betting account. I would do that without a second thought. But 15 minutes before that, I could have been looking at a sandwich that cost £3 in the shop and going like, I'm not spending £3 on a sandwich. I'll just not eat. Like that's the way. I was almost like I wouldn't spend my money on anything other than gambling, but I wouldn't be bothered about throwing money into my online account no matter what amount it was.
No, of course, right? No, I understand that. That's yes. So I guess this is something I always have a question about, like with people who have other addictions, like gambling is a big addiction. And you kind of talked about it like a little bit with kind of filling the void, right? So this is kind of a two-part question. So the first part is, have you filled that void with any other addictive tendencies since you've stopped gambling? So, pick your poison on what that is. And then also, because of gambling is an addiction, are you worried that being prone to addictive behaviors might pick up something else and become like, and that might become a problem?
Yeah, if I could pick one, well, probably two things would be that relationship with money that I had at the start. Mm-hmm. I would liken it to an addictive behavior. I still had that feeling of I have money and I wasn't settled because I had money in my account. I was always used to having no money, so I was spending it just to get rid of it. And chocolate would be the other one. I was never really a massive chocolate person, but since I've stopped gambling, I find myself eating a lot more chocolate than I ever did. Which isn't anything serious, but yeah, I am slightly concerned with getting started on another addiction. I say I have an e-cigarette, so I've obviously got a bit of a nicotine addiction. I drink. I don't drink very often, but if I do, I have a couple. I've got two young kids, so I rarely go out for a drink or anything like that.
Yeah.
The first couple of weeks in recovery, I found myself buying like a case of beer, each weekend, and I was going to myself, no, hold on a second, that's not even go down that road. That's just, there's no need to be doing that on a regular basis. So that's limited now to maybe once a month or once every other month or something. And again, a lot of my tendencies, like Netflix is a prime example. Like I just fucking binge watch stuff. If I see it, there's like that. I know that's what it's sort of built for, but like I hadn't seen the Hunger Games like at any point there.
Knock that out in like half a day, man.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh, hold on, there's the Hunger Games, but they're all on here, one after the other. That's how I go. That's how I roll with things. If I see a series, it's like I need to sit up and watch it all. Like my dad gave me a book yesterday. It's called Tony 10. It's a really good book about a guy in Ireland who gambled £10 million by stealing from the post office. And I read the whole book yesterday. Like, and the last time I read a book was probably in school.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't put it down. But I don't know if that's some sort of, like that's almost a compulsion. Like I had to keep going. I couldn't settle until I finished it. I was sitting up to like 3 a.m. reading it last night.
No, I totally get it, especially the Netflix thing. Oh man, I will binge a show so fast. But yeah, yes, Netflix. Like, right, I watched Russian Doll yesterday. I knocked it out in 2 sessions, just like that. But all right, well, that's pretty much all of my questions from me. So the next question is from someone from Twitter. So this, and like I'm gonna mispronounce I mispronounce like every single one of these people's handles, but it's from AJAS, and let me look up the correct Mauritius, I believe. It's a country in South somewhere. How did you pronounce it?
Mauritius.
Yeah, that. So he asked, why are alcohol and/or gambling addictions viewed as being taboo in some cultures and countries, such as his? So what are your views on that, as far as the taboo nature of any addiction, whether gambling or whatever else, in different cultures or different countries, or if you've experienced that in your country?
I think that in other cultures, I suppose gambling. I know that I think it's in India. Gambling's illegal, so there's certain cultures where it's it happens, but it's illegal. So there's no real people speaking out about it there. I don't know if Mauritius is the same. But like I even found, over here that there's more people talking about it, but I just don't think people understand it. Like there's this attitude almost why don't you just stop?
Yeah.
Like why would you keep doing that? But people seem to understand more now. Like, oh, that guy's an alcoholic, or that person there's got a drug problem, and that they can understand the issue now. Like they're addicted to that. But whenever it comes to gambling, people are like, oh well, just stop. You're just losing money. It's stupid anyway. It's supposed to be entertainment and all this thing, but I don't think people understand how it makes you feel. And that's why I think people were afraid to speak out. Like there's a good analogy for it, which I think sums up how powerful gambling addiction can be. If you put somebody in a room with 100 grand worth of heroin, who was a heroin addict, and said, take all that in 24 hours, they'd overdose. If you did the same to an alcoholic with their favorite drink, they'd overdose. If you did that to a gambling addict, you'd have it spent within an hour and be asking for another 100 grand. There's no end point for a gambling addict.
That's true.
There's no overdosing, and it's so secretive. You could see someone who's got a drink problem or a drug problem and notice changes in their behavior. It's harder to do with a gambling addict, especially with online. The whole time I was telling my story there, I was pretty much present at every event, looking after my kids, in the same room as my partner, in the same room as my mom and dad, and no one had a clue.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I know from like, I at least where I am in the U.S., like we see it. Gambling addiction is definitely becoming more mainstream as a talking point. I mean, alcoholism and drug addiction. There's still moments where it feels taboo. Like I keep my anonymity, for example, from work. I just don't feel comfortable, letting people know that about me because of the judgment or whatever. I didn't just, not the just, but I didn't, I did a lot of drugs. So, I get worried about what people think about that. But also with like gambling, because so many casinos are opening up, at least around here, I'll see billboards all the time about gambling addiction. But you're right, like it's not talked about as much as, drugs and alcohol. But yeah, the like, why can't you stop? I think that's going to take time with the general public and re-education of people on how mental illness works, for people to understand why people who suffer from like different addictions can't stop, right? Like there isn't just a switch in our brains that says like, all right, well, I should stop doing this. Like we're programmed to do that because our brain chemistry just works a different way than other people's. And until there are like, the education has changed for the general public to know how that works. But I see it happening, and that's encouraging, and I hope that happens like all around the world,
Yeah, even whenever I was at school, you were told like the dangers of drinking too much alcohol or taking too much drugs, and the dangers of sexually transmitted diseases. Nobody ever mentioned gambling. It's the new addiction now, and I think a lot of people are starting to pick up on it. And with the way that America is expanding its gambling operations, with the online starting to become legal over there and things, like it's going to be the next big addiction.
Oh yeah,
because that's how it works, and it's going to be tough because it's so hidden and it's so easy to do online. At least if you're going to a casino, you're kind of, although people do that and they're able to hide it and lie about their whereabouts, at least you're missing.
Yeah.
Somebody sort of going, where have you been? But if you're doing it online under their nose, no one's going to be thinking anything's wrong.
That's so right. Like the accessibility of online gambling is kind of like, that's crazy. Like to think about that it's always there. But that Stop Gambling site, that sounds great. That you can, at least take that first step to put a blockade up between yourself and those mechanisms.
Yeah, that's like for anyone who's got an online gambling problem, GamStop's the first thing you should be signing up to, and it's, as I say, there's ways around it. If people are gonna try and find those out or use them, there's not much that can be done. But it's a good start anyway, for you to try and stop. And the other one would be to hand control your finances over to someone else, because that's the two things really. You've got money, time, and opportunities. The three things that a gambling addict needs to do some damage.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, man. Well, hey, I would like to, we're at the end here, but I would like to thank you for coming on. So I'll give you a little golf clap that we do. Thank you again so much. We'll give you here a minute to kind of tell the people who are, struggling with addiction, give them kind of words of hope. Tell the people what you would say to someone who's struggling.
Yeah, as I say, I think the quote that I sort of mentioned at the end of the story is what I'll probably just go with. At some point there is no excuse. Either you want to do everything it takes to make it happen, or you don't. And that stuck with me from early on in my recovery. And as though it's only been 4 odd months since I stopped gambling, I can see a change in myself.
Yeah.
And recovery is possible, but it's hard. It takes work, and the only person that needs to change is me. the gambling industry, as far as I can see, is the same as it was when I was gambling. The person who's made the changes has been me, and that's what's improved my circumstances as it stands now.
Awesome. And you also mentioned you have a blog. Where can people find more of your stuff online?
If you follow me on Twitter at RUSS_789, it's pinned under there, or it's Mark's Recovery at blogspot.com. Twitter's probably the easiest one to remember.
Awesome. Well, again, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. And, to everyone out there, check out Mark's blog. And also, check out, all of our handles, either on Twitter or Instagram. We have old episodes coming up on YouTube and new episodes coming up on anywhere you find podcasts. But most importantly, stay safe and stay clean.